You think you're making choices, but most of your choices are already made by a system inside your head you rarely question. Every human walks through life wearing invisible lenses, mindsets that filter reality long before it ever reaches awareness. You may call them opinions, beliefs, or ways of thinking, but they're far more powerful than that. They are the architects of perception. They dictate not just what you see, but how you see it. And when these mindsets go unchecked, they quietly build the walls of your own prison. You feel certain about your goals, your emotions, even your failures, yet all of them stem from unseen patterns shaping every decision. They tell you what's possible and what's not. They whisper, "Be realistic," when your soul wants to take risks. They reward comfort and punish curiosity. And so, without realizing it, you live a life directed by mindsets you never consciously chose. You begin to exist, rather than live, running on autopilot, chasing definitions of success inherited from others. Awareness changes everything. Once you see that your thoughts are not facts but filters, you begin to awaken from the trance. The mind that once controlled you becomes something you can shape. Every belief, every reaction, every emotion starts revealing its origin. You start to ask, who programmed these patterns? Why do I respond this way? That question marks the beginning of freedom. Yet awareness alone isn't enough. The moment you see your mindset for what it is, another challenge appears: transformation. The destructive patterns will not vanish through willpower alone. They feed on certainty and fear, and to starve them, you must step into uncertainty. You must adopt a new orientation toward life, one that replaces control with curiosity. That new way is what philosophers, scientists, and mystics alike have called the experimental mindset. A way of thinking that dissolves rigidity, breaks cycles of destruction, and returns your mind to its natural state: fluid, adaptive, alive. You've already seen how destructive mindsets operate in the shadows, quietly shaping your reality. To break free, you need more than awareness. You need a new way of navigating life. That's where the shift from linear thinking to experimental living becomes essential, because a destructive mindset feeds on rigid expectations, and rigidity thrives in a linear model of life. Linear thinking tells you that life is a straight road. Follow the milestones, tick the boxes, climb the ladders. It promises stability, but delivers repetition. And repetition without purpose breeds emptiness. You start believing that success means reaching a finish line, when in truth, there is no finish line. That illusion creates burnout, comparison, and frustration, the perfect soil for destructive patterns to grow. Cynicism thrives when promises of happiness fail. Escapism grows when the path feels suffocating. Perfectionism hardens when the ladder seems endless. When you step into experimental living, you disrupt that cycle. Instead of asking, "What's the next step on the path everyone else is walking?" you ask, "What can I discover if I try something new?" This subtle change weakens the grip of destructive mindsets. Suddenly, failure is no longer proof that you're unworthy, it's simply information. Delay is no longer defeat, it's feedback. Curiosity, once suppressed, begins to expand again. And ambition, once chained to external outcomes, is reconnected to growth and meaning. Living experimentally doesn't mean rejecting goals. It means redefining your relationship with them. A goal in the linear mindset is a finish line that must be crossed. A goal in the experimental mindset is a question that must be explored. This shift rewires your brain to see possibilities instead of dead ends, data instead of disasters. In that space, cynicism loses its grip, escapism feels less tempting, and perfectionism loses its false authority. You stop chasing certainty and start cultivating growth. To fix a destructive mindset, you must allow yourself to unlearn the script of linear living. The script says, stay on track, stay safe, and don't deviate. The experimental voice whispers something different. Step off the track, explore the unknown, and let curiosity guide you. Once you honor that voice, the destructive loops that once controlled your life begin to break. The cycle ends, not because you forced it, but because you've chosen to live in a system where those mindsets cannot survive. When you begin to live experimentally, you start to notice what has been holding you back all along, your own mental traps. The shift from linear to experimental living reveals how many of your thoughts were never truly yours. They were survival responses, learned reactions, subtle distortions passed down by culture, fear, and self-doubt. To fix a destructive mindset, you must identify these hidden programs. Awareness exposes the architecture of destruction. You see how certain ways of thinking drain your energy, distort your choices, and pull you away from your authentic path. There are 3 dominant traps of the destructive mind: cynicism, escapism, and perfectionism. Each one is a response to fear. Cynicism fears disappointment, escapism fears responsibility, and perfectionism fears imperfection itself. Together they form a triangle of self-sabotage that keeps you from growing. They feel different on the surface, but all 3 serve the same master: avoidance. Avoiding pain, avoiding failure, avoiding vulnerability. The more you avoid, the more disconnected you become from life's natural flow of learning and change. Cynicism is the most corrosive of them all because it poisons curiosity. It convinces you that caring is naive, that trying is pointless. You begin to mock hope, not because you're above it, but because you've been betrayed by it before. Cynicism claims to protect you from disappointment, but in truth, it only guarantees it. It locks you in a loop of self-fulfilling defeat where nothing feels worth attempting. To fix this, you must dare to hope again, not blindly, but consciously. You must allow curiosity to coexist with wisdom, to see possibility even in imperfection. Escapism, on the other hand, wears the mask of peace. It tells you that rest is healing, but it quietly transforms rest into avoidance. You distract yourself, dream about future changes, but never engage with the present moment. You escape not because you are lazy, but because you fear failure. True freedom begins when you stop running from discomfort and instead learn from it. To fix this pattern, reconnect curiosity with action. Don't fantasize about the next version of yourself. Experiment with becoming it. Even the smallest act of movement begins to dismantle the escapist illusion. Then there is perfectionism, the most deceptive of the 3. It pretends to be discipline, but it's built on fear. It tells you that happiness comes after perfection, that you must first become flawless to deserve peace. Perfectionism traps you in endless cycles of almost there. You overthink, overwork, and overlook the beauty of progress. The key to breaking this trap is humility, the willingness to be imperfect and to learn publicly. An experimental mindset thrives on imperfection because mistakes are data, not failures. When you accept that, the destructive mind begins to heal. You no longer fear being wrong, you fear stagnation instead. Fixing your destructive mindset means rebalancing these 3 forces. You restore curiosity where cynicism once ruled, awaken ambition where escapism once numbed, and replace perfection with progress. You don't need to destroy these parts of yourself. They're not enemies, just outdated defenses. Once you understand them, you can transform them into wisdom. Cynicism becomes discernment, escapism becomes imagination, perfectionism becomes devotion, and with that, your mind shifts from destruction to creation, from surviving life to consciously shaping it. Once you understand the traps of cynicism, escapism, and perfectionism, awareness alone is not enough. You must apply it. Knowing your patterns is only half the work. Transforming them requires movement. The destructive mindset thrives in stagnation. It feeds on overthinking, self-criticism, and endless waiting for the right time. That's why the antidote lies in experimentation. Designing small, conscious experiments allows you to interrupt old patterns while building new neural pathways for growth. You stop theorizing about change and begin embodying it. Think of experimentation as the art of sacred curiosity in motion. Instead of striving for control, you learn through experience. Rather than declaring, "I'll change forever," you say, "I'll test this for now." That mindset removes pressure and invites playfulness back into self-development. You begin to see yourself as both scientist and subject, observing, adjusting, learning. Each experiment becomes a mirror that reflects how your mind reacts to novelty, discomfort, and uncertainty. It's not about success or failure, it's about gathering data on who you are becoming. A powerful way to begin is by creating what can be called a pact, a conscious commitment to an action for a defined period. You don't need grand gestures or complex goals. Choose something small but meaningful, something that challenges an old pattern. If cynicism has dulled your spirit, commit to learning something new for 2 weeks. If escapism has kept you stagnant, choose one task you've been avoiding and perform it consistently for a set duration. If perfectionism has trapped you in fear, commit to finishing projects at 80% completion and releasing them anyway. Each pact becomes a micro-breakthrough, proof that your mind can change. A pact follows 4 principles. It must be purposeful, actionable, continuous, and trackable. Purposeful means it matters to your growth. It touches something sacred within you. Actionable means it can be done now, without external resources. Continuous means it's repeated regularly for the chosen duration. And trackable means you simply record whether you did it or not. You don't measure success with metrics or achievements. You measure it by presence. Did you show up for yourself today? That's all that matters, because consistency, not intensity, rewires the mind. Through these small experiments, you begin to disarm your destructive patterns. You prove to your subconscious that change is safe. You show your nervous system that failure isn't fatal, it's feedback. You retrain your brain to see effort as exploration rather than judgment. Each experiment turns resistance into curiosity and fear into data. Over time, these micro-experiments accumulate into transformation. The destructive mindset begins to lose its structure because its foundation, fear of the unknown, has been replaced by trust in discovery. The mind becomes fluid again, capable of adaptation, growth, and creation. As you begin to live experimentally, curiosity returns like breath after suffocation. It dissolves fear, revives wonder, and transforms uncertainty into growth. This isn't just psychological, it's biological. Neuroscience shows that the brain craves knowledge like the body craves water. To suppress curiosity is to dehydrate the mind. To feed it is to awaken the spirit. Living experimentally trains this hunger. Each small experiment nourishes the circuits of growth and adaptability. You learn not to fear change, but to expect it. Your identity becomes fluid, capable of expanding with every experience. The destructive mindset, once rigid and defensive, begins to dissolve under the light of curiosity. True change happens when both external and internal data align. External signals, results, outcomes, achievements, tell you what works in the world. Internal signals, joy, peace, fulfillment, tell you what works in the soul. Ignore either, and your growth becomes unbalanced. Pay attention to both, and your evolution becomes complete. Maybe your external life looks successful, but internally, you're crumbling. Or perhaps you feel inspired, but can't sustain yourself materially. The experimental mindset teaches integration. You refine, adjust, and balance, persist when it works, pivot when it doesn't. You stop forcing yourself to fit into a mold that no longer reflects who you are. Fixing your destructive mindset is not about replacing darkness with light. It's about learning to see in the dark. It's about realizing that your old mindsets were never enemies. They were lessons, waiting to be understood. Your mind is not broken. It's simply been trained to fear the unknown. Every destructive pattern, cynicism, escapism, perfectionism, was built to protect you once, but protection has become a cage. Now is the time to outgrow it. You fix your mindset not through force, but through awareness, through curiosity, through the courage to live as an experiment, not a conclusion. Let every question lead you closer to truth. Let every setback become a study in resilience. Stop trying to control the outcome. Start observing the process. Because once you awaken the experimental mind, life itself begins to respond differently. The world bends, adapts, and reshapes to meet your curiosity. And suddenly, what once felt destructive becomes the very energy that rebuilds you from within.